All right, the Gamescom news continues to pour on in. Thank you all so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new, consider subscribing. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for stopping back by. So yeah, man, we got, it's kind of a weird episode today. We have a lot of small stories. And I know I've been dropping these like 50-minute long episodes as of late. I'm going to try to get out of your hair in 30 minutes or so, but we got a lot to go through, and yeah, how about we go ahead and just jump into this thing, not waste any of y'all's time. Hollow Knight is releasing in 14 days. I guess that's the big story that we should probably lead with. September 4th, Hollow Knight Silksong will be available to purchase in 14 days. Like, it's just, that's very hard to compute in my brain. This is one of those games that felt like it was never, ever going to release. And now it's just like, 2 weeks. There you go. And I actually think this is a smart move. You know, don't give it a release date for too far out. And I think, you know, dropping it in a couple weeks is like, it kind of brings it back down to earth. And doesn't let the hype just continue to spiral out of control for another 6-7 months. And then, you know, if you would have, even if you put like November or December on it, it's like just building up more and more anticipation that is so hard to live up to. Because I know people love the first Hollow Knight, but it released in a totally different environment. You know, when it comes to just the indie market right now. And I'm not saying there were no indie games releasing in 2017. There were tons of indie games on the market in 2017. You know, you saw that with the Switch rollout, and when the Switch launched, but it was kind of that thing, right? The Switch launches, and then there was this big indie boom again because of that platform, because the Switch was like the perfect place to play these style of games. But regardless of all that, even when you saw the influx of games of this ilk, Hollow Knight still rose above the majority of them. So I'm not trying to diminish the success of, you know, the first Hollow Knight game, but you're getting 2D side-scrolling indie games hitting Steam and consoles every single day now. And it's to the point where games like, what was that, Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, I believe was the name, which is like, by all accounts, an all-time great game within that genre. And it made zero noise in terms of sales. You know, you look at that Rogue Prince of Persia game that just released by the damn Dead Cells developer, and it peaked at like 900 concurrent players on Steam. And I get it. I know what you're saying. Like, that's a console game first and foremost, and you're probably right. But still, 900? A peak concurrent player count of 900 for a game that is, you know, beloved? Ninja Gaiden Ragebound as well peaked at like 1,700 players, 16, I think, like 1,600, somewhere in between 1,1700, and that's in a similar camp of Hollow Knight 1 in terms of just critical reception. And listen, Hollow Knight will perform much better than those games because it's not a relic from 30 years ago. Like, I totally get that, and like, I would just kind of on the fly here, throwing out a number, throwing a dart at the board, seeing what we can hit in terms of peak Steam concurrent, and none of this shit. Like, that's not the only determining factor for a game's sales success. There's so many different platforms to launch on, but it's the one that's kind of public facing that we can all look at and be like, oh damn, okay. Other than, you know, Circana and the best-selling games in the US for each individual month. But even with that, some of that data, depending on the publisher, depending on the developer, like, that can be a little bit, that data can get skewed. So that Steam DB thing is like, it is very, very kind of wildly transparent, to the point where there were certain developers, I think Ubisoft was like, we don't want that fucking data available. We don't want people to be able to screenshot it and go, hey, Star Wars Outlaws peaked at 27,000 concurrent players or whatever. I don't even think it was that. And then, you know, it kind of looks like a PR black eye for them to some degree, which I don't really understand that either. Just because a game doesn't have a bunch of people buying it or playing it doesn't mean it's not great. I look at something like, and not to go off on a total tangent, but like Banisher's Ghost of New Eden didn't do all that well. and that's like one of the better games of the generation so far, in my opinion. But yeah, just kind of staying in that wheelhouse of like, what could that number be? I would say it. I think the first one peaked around like 20,000 concurrent players, Hollow Knight 1. So I would say probably 55 to 60, maybe even close to 70,000 concurrent players. Like, the hype is there. I'm not trying to diminish that whatsoever. This is going to be the biggest game of this genre in modern times, like, no doubt, and so I'm not at all trying to discount that. That is a absolute fact. But at the same time, it's just, I'm just saying, I think the longer you draw this out, the more harsh the reception is going to be. Because I do think there's a very strong likelihood that one of the main takeaways after Silksong ends up releasing is like, yeah, this is good, but was it worth all the hype? I think that Hollow Knight 1 is at like a 90 overall on Metacritic. I don't think this one will hit that. And I think a lot of it is just due to the kind of the overhyped nature of it. Waiting at every single show, Keeley putting on the damn clown nose, tweeting out the clown picture, and like, I understand that is very inside baseball shit that most people aren't going to account for, like most normal people. But the people that are reviewing these games are the critics who are, they're aware of all the different goings on, and they've been watching these shows and predicting Hollow Knight will be there and getting disappointed. And like, I don't know. There is something to the metagame of all this, of like, how excited, how hyped can you be for something? And then if that excitement, that hype is at 11, and then the game comes out and it's like a 8 or even a 9, does that drop it down to like a 7? You know what I'm saying? There's this weird mathematical equation that's hard to quantify by basic sort of, like, you can't rationalize it, but it's something that is in your psyche somewhere. And you got to try to flush that shit out, but I don't know if it's flushable. It's something that's just kind of instinctual, something that you can't really describe, but it's there. And I know it's happened to me before. A game I'm just so excited for, can't wait to play it, it comes out and it's good but not great, and then my opinion on it goes from good to like average because I was so excited for it. I know that's a weird thing that might not make any fucking sense, but I think that this will still be great, no doubt. If the first one's at a 90, I think this one will be at like an 88. You know what I mean? I don't think it'll hit the bar of that first one, but I still think it'll be great. And I hope it gets a physical release, man. This is one of those games that I would love to pick up and have a physical copy of it. And with the Switch too, that'd be one that, once again, like Hollow Knight 1. Hollow Knight 1 got a physical release, I believe, but maybe it wasn't at launch. I could be wrong on a lot of this, but I do think it got a Switch 1 physical release. But that'd be a great Switch 2 pickup for people. And be perfect timing with the Switch 2 just coming out, launch there day one. Like, I think the game is definitely going to do very, very well. And it's coming to Game Pass day one. So I'll probably hop in there if it doesn't get a physical release. But kind of staying right on track with games that were announced but seemingly never releasing. Hollow Knight is actually releasing. Silksong is coming out, and just to reiterate, that date is September 4th, which is fucking crazy, 14 days. But we did get more information on Replaced, but still no release date for that one, unfortunately. So Igor Gritsay, the co-founder of Sad Cat Studios, the developer of Replaced, sat down with IGN for an interview about the game, and they showed some new footage, some new gameplay, and looks great. Looks as great as ever. Unfortunately, once again, no release date was given. So I think this game was announced like 5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of fucking insane. Regardless, it's cool. It's good that they're still cooking on this thing, and the details and gameplay and the story beats, all that, everything here that was shown off looked really solid. They were talking about, the narrative and how you're playing as like an AI that might slowly become sentient over the course of the game and develop these kind of human emotions and empathy, because like the AI's main goal, the robot's main goal, is to work for these corporations and to extract the best organs from the disposables, which is like a subclass of humanity. That they're calling them the disposables, that the government views these people as like worthless, so they're just being hunted down by these AI robots to extract the only thing that the government or the corporations or whatever view valuable from these people that they still possess, which is their fucking organs. I love that main plot point so much. I love the idea that you are playing as an AI who is sent after these humans, and just how fucking dark those opening few hours are going to be until you somehow develop some degree of sentient behavior, and just seeing how you're going to be able to discover it. And I'm very much on board for the main hook of that story. However, the combat, I will say, looked extremely repetitive in this clip, and I'll have the clip running on screen for y'all to see, but I worry about that, man, because it felt like in 1 minute of watching this, I saw every damn move that little robot character had to offer. And I don't know. I guess my only hope is that that's early game footage, and later in the game you have a few different attacks you can perform, and you have these upgrades and maybe new gadgets and abilities or whatever the case may be. Or hopefully, if that's not the case, then hopefully it's just not a lot of combat scenarios throughout the game at all, because they do show like traversal and platforming sections. So if combat is only 20% of the game, just to add a bit of pacing and a bit of variety to what you're doing on a moment-to-moment basis. So if you're like, here's a little bit of combat, here's a little bit of traversal, here's a little bit of platforming, here's a little bit of story, and just mixing that all up into this overall concoction where no one element of those multiple elements feels overly relied upon or overly repetitive. So yeah, it's crazy to like go through all this and look at how beautiful the game looks, and the lighting is just out of this world. And they were talking about like one of the co-founders of the studio is an like absolute cinephile, movie buff, and he's going in there for hours and changing camera angles and trying to figure out the correct pacing and lighting and all of these different things, and then trying to roll out the story beats as best as possible. And so like, yeah, the dude was talking like, he'll spend hours and hours and hours going in there and doing that. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, the game taking 5 years to come out, I guess it does make sense whenever you're going through that degree of painstaking fucking detail to get every little square inch of this thing produced to the finest detail. But yeah, I definitely want to play it. No idea when we will be playing it, but shout out to Replaced. Gonna take a quick drink real quick. All right, another small story, but another one that is very appealing to. There's actually a lot of horror stuff in here. So Tormented Souls 2 is releasing in October 23rd, and we got a gameplay trailer. It was around a minute long or so. I think it looks really good. Looks very similar to the first one. It seems like the camera is pulled in a little bit more. Doesn't seem as the first one wasn't top down, but it had more of that RE2-ish camera perspective, that Silent Hill 1-ish camera perspective pulled way out. And this one seems just a little bit more over the shoulder. Not quite over the shoulder, but yeah, I still need to go back and finish that first game. I was enjoying it. There were some frustrating elements with it, the map, and there were just some kind of frustrating navigation issues with that first game. But I don't know, I might watch a recap video just before hopping into this one. But I want to show some love to this game, because at the end of the trailer, they made a point to state that the physical release for this game will be available for purchase I'm assuming day and date, because they put like a full stinger in the trailer at the end of it, like as a marketing beat to be like, hey, physical versions are available as well. So I think you'll be able to go in and pick up Tormented Souls 2 the same day as the digital copy releases, which is getting fewer and far between. Fewer and further? So how you say that? Fewer and further between? Words, not my strong suit. But, with indies and double A's, you are getting to a point where a lot of those digital copies are releasing before the physical copy, and which, is fine. I'm totally fine with waiting for the best version of the game, and even if I have to wait a few months for it to release, like, I'm totally fine with that. But at the same time, like, ideally, I would like to be playing the physical. I would like to go in, buy the physical copy on day one, have a really good build of the game on that physical copy, play through that, and not have to wait for it. And so, I don't know, I more than anything, I like that they're using this as a marketing beat. And October is absolutely fucking swamped. I think I wrote down some of the other games that are releasing in October. Yeah, so we have Ghost of Yotei, Borderlands 4, Little Nightmares 3, Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines 2, Battlefield 6, Ninja Gaiden 4, The Outer Worlds 2. I have The Outer Worlds 2 twice, don't I? Mina the Hollower. And so listen, October is absolutely fucking packed. But that little stinger, that little bit at the end of that trailer, their commitment to the physical format and being a smaller team like that, I'll give you my commitment right here. Fucking Tormented Souls 2 will be a day one pickup for me. I will absolutely be buying that physical copy on day one. And if you're committed to the physical format like that, I will commit to your game, even though I don't know if I'll be getting to it on day one because October is slammed. But I absolutely will be picking that thing up, supporting it, because you're supporting the format that I love so dearly. So just kind of want to give that shout out, and then maybe, hopefully, God willing, we can see other smaller teams, smaller publishers use that as a marketing beat for their games. All right, so this is kind of some unfortunate timing that I need to... So yesterday I was talking about the whole Bioshock situation and how Rod Ferguson was coming in and kind of leading up Cloud Chamber for Bioshock 4. Well, I posted that, and then like 10 minutes after I posted it, this story broke. Over 80 developers, 1/3 of the team, were laid off at Bioshock Studio Cloud Chamber, with the game now delayed from a planned late 2026 to an early 2027 release. Yeah, so obviously really, really bad timing for me to post that video yesterday. I think most people know that, I'm nowhere in the video am I talking about this story, but I do think at some point I was like, yeah, this is good news that Rod Ferguson is coming in and taking over the project. And it's like, oh, fuck, I hope people didn't think I was saying it's good news that over 80 developers were laid off, because I didn't know about that information at the time of the recording. That sucks, right? Like, I'm never going to cheer for layoffs. I'm never going to cheer for developers losing their job. That is not something to be celebrated ever, even if it is a situation of like the game improves because of it and we get a better game because of it. Like, that could be a reality, right? Like, you look at something like Dead Island 2 that was in development hell and went through multiple different development teams until it finally got out the door, and it was like, yeah, it's a pretty good game. So like sometimes these things are, at the end of the day, like you have to make these tough decisions, and I'm not putting my business brain completely to the side. Like, I do understand the reality of these business decisions, but at the same time, it's never something to celebrate. You're never like happy to see fucking 1/3 of a team, 1/3 of a studio lose their fucking livelihood. Like, that is an absolute bummer. So just want to get that on record. But the thing here about that 2026, 2027 release window, I doubt that. I do not think this game releases by 2027. If they're restructuring to this degree, in 2025, late 2025, there's no way it's shipping in less than 2 years. I mean, unless like a bulk of the mechanical work is already complete and they're just going back and rewriting shit, like if the story wasn't that good, or, you know, they're going in and polishing and re-recording VO and motion capture and all that. But like even there, I don't know, man. I just doubt it. That even that alone is a lot of fucking work for 2 years. And I don't really see this game being in like a super solid state mechanically either. And then you just like cut 80 people and bring Rod Ferguson to lead development. Like that doesn't give me confidence. I know Strauss Zelnick was talking about how it was in a good state, but they need it to be in a great state. And it's like good games are no longer good enough. We need to make exceptional games for them to have success on this market, which is how competitive the gaming scene is right now in the AAA space, or just really fucking gaming in general. There's so much coming out every single day that's vying for your time and attention. Just like, you know, we talked about TikTok and Twitter and all of this shit that's vying for your attention constantly. And so, but I just don't see a world where this game was like a year or two out from release, damn near feature complete. Because the last year of development, you're definitely doing some tinkering, and you're definitely like, but it's mostly bug fixes and especially at this level. You know, you're talking about a multi-$100 million game, I would assume. I mean, I hope it's not, because I don't think that that's necessarily smart for the future of Bioshock. Like, I don't really think those games warrant a $200-300 million budget, whenever I think the best-selling one was Infinite at like around 12 million copies sold or something like that. So the ROI really isn't mathing there. And I once again, if you want to go out and make a $400 million Bioshock game that just completely blows the roof off the joint and is like one of the craziest, most technically impressive games ever made, like, I'll take it. As a consumer, I'm happy to jump into something like that. You know what I mean? We don't get many big budget first person shooter, you know, single player story centric games at all anymore. So like, I'll happily take it, but probably not the wisest investment. But yeah, don't get me wrong. This game will come out, and ultimately these decisions might lead to the best version of the game coming out. And I do believe that statement by Strauss Zelnick. I do think that, you know, when he said that they're going to make sure this game is kind of in an exceptional, excellent state before it releases, I think that is the game plan. And I think that likely will be the case when the game comes out. Like, I don't really have a lot of doubt about the game being good when it releases. I just have doubt about when it's going to release. Like, I don't think this statement here of 2026, 2027, I see no world where that's a reality. And I also don't think it should be, because theoretically, hopefully, possibly, maybe Judas will come out in 2026. And then it's like, okay, we'll space it out. Bioshock in 2028, 2029. Perfect. So yeah, I think this is going to be a while, but I mean, we've been waiting a while as is. We got so much shit here to cover. I don't want to ramble too much on this, because I've talked about Bioshock so much in the last few weeks, but is there really a yearning for Bioshock like that? You know what I mean? Like, is there really this just swell of millions of people who are like, we fucking gotta go back to Bioshock? You know, I think take your time, make the best game possible. I don't really think that you risk losing that audience by taking more time, because if that was the case, you already lost them. It's been, what, 2013? Yes, I mean, yeah, dude, it's been well over a decade. Like, if you were going to lose those people, they're already long gone. So take your time, make it good. So staying in the horror space, Nightdive CEO wants to remaster Eternal Darkness. So Nightdive CEO says he would love to see Eternal Darkness get re-released. Eternal Darkness has been kind of locked behind the GameCube Nintendo wall all this time, and it's something I would personally love to see get re-released. and that's coming from Shaq News. I'd be so down for this, dude. So down for this. But that statement there of Eternal Darkness has been kind of locked behind the GameCube/Nintendo wall all this time. I don't think a re-release would change that. I mean, it would get it away from GameCube, but it would just be going to Switch too. I don't think there's any world where Nintendo is like, yeah, put it on PlayStation and Xbox and put it on PC. Like, I don't think that's a realistic scenario whatsoever, but it'd be dope. I would absolutely fucking love that. It'd be dope if it just went on to sell like gangbusters, even regardless of where it, if it's just on Nintendo, if it's just on whatever. Like, that would be fantastic as well. And then if there's some world where Nintendo would allow Nightdive to go in and make a sequel, I fucking hey, dude. I mean, because that is kind of the thing where, and I guess I should mention this. I don't know if I haven't mentioned it, but I bought a Switch 2. I finally went in and picked up a Switch 2, and I'll talk. I got a pickups video coming out, and I'll talk more about it there. But I finally did go in and purchase a Switch 2, and I got it for Donkey Kong. But like, this is the type of shit that really gets me in, and I know I'm the outlier. Right? Like, I know I am not in the majority of people who are picking up a Nintendo device. I get that. The majority of people are picking it up for Donkey Kong, for Mario, for Zelda. That's not really me. Donkey Kong's dope. Been playing it fucking awesome. But this is the type of shit. Deadly Premonition. This. No More Heroes. Stuff like that. That's what'll get me in the door for, well, I guess I'm already in the door, but you get what the fuck I'm saying. Like, that's the type of shit that makes me really excited to go out and purchase more games for your system. And so, but kind of just Nightdive right now, I think, are on such a hot streak, and they've kind of tackled a lot of different realms. They have like The Thing, and that's a third-person shooter from the PS2 era, and then they have the like their first-person boomer shooter renaissance that they're kind of spearheading. And so I just start thinking about like, what else could they re-release, remaster that would make sense, or just, I don't know, maybe not even necessarily make sense, but like, what would you personally want to see Nightdive remaster? I guess that's the question I'll pose to y'all today, is like, what 3 or 4 games, 5 games would you really, really want to see Nightdive take a crack at? I jotted down about 5 of my own here. And the first one that came to mind for me was The Suffering. Similar gameplay to The Thing on the PS2. I would love to see just... that game has such a dark ass tone, and the monster design all representing the executions, and just, I think the game plays well. It's fun as hell. That would be one that would be dope to see remastered, because I think that's something, I'm not saying it holds up in comparison to like your modern day third person shooters or whatever, but I think it still holds up pretty well. So I don't even know if like, I think that would compute to a modern audience. They'd be able to pick it up and be like, damn, this is still really fucking fun. I would say the original Marathon games. If Bungie didn't completely shit the bed in terms of PR on the new game, like, Nightdive would be the perfect team to go in and just kind of port, remaster, up-res, whatever you want to call it, those original Marathon games and get those 2 consoles and get them, because I think they're all locked to PC at this point. The original, how many Marathon games are there actually? I think there's 2, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that would be dope in a world where current day Bungie didn't completely shit the bed. But Messiah is another one that's PC only, and I remember seeing this a long time ago, and I thought this game looked so sick back in the day, but I didn't have a PC. And it's like this cyberpunk city, and you're possessing people, and then, supposedly it's super, super buggy. So once again, when thinking about games that could benefit from a remaster, this is definitely one that could benefit from a remaster. Clean it up and polish that thing up. And because I think the idea is really sick. And that's also something I think about sometimes in terms of remasters, is like, remastering great games and making them better, or remastering great games and just getting them available to more people is dope. But I really like the idea of remastering games that were a little bit janky but had good ideas. Like a good premise, a good story, a good something, but just didn't execute on, rather it be polish or, was a little bit buggy, a little bit janky. The shooting wasn't all that great. Whatever it may be, like going in and tweaking something is always really appealing to me. So, yeah, that would be, Messiah would be one on the board for sure. But speaking of Eternal Darkness, how about The Darkness, the game called The Darkness? That would be sick as shit. It's another one that's in their wheelhouse of first-person shooters, super dark, anti-hero, sort of superhero-adjacent kind of game. All these Venom-esque powers popping out. The Darkness 1 and 2 would be dope remasters. The Darkness 1 kind of starts off as like this mob story of sorts. Like, those games are pretty sick. Weird pick to get on the board here, but Scarface on the PS2. I'm sure that would be hell on earth in terms of figuring out the licensing process, but that game is so criminally underrated. Like, genuinely one of the most slept on games of that PS2 era. It is so fucking good. And it's one of the first like open world crime sandbox games that actually had like totally competent shooting. That game plays really fucking well. But one that I do not think will ever happen because of EA's resistance to the remaster is Mercenaries 1 and 2. That would be absolutely top of the list for me. And that would be another one that I'd just be so curious about from a technical perspective. Like, I wonder what that level of destruction could look like and feel like in a remastered 2025, like that presentation, that package. Like, what would that look like? I'm sure, I mean, obviously it would look pretty much just like the PS3 game, but for Mercenaries 2, but I don't know. I would be so down to go back to those Mercenary games. Those both fucking excellent video games. And I don't know. I could go on and on with different things I would want to see remastered. I think they're doing a great job. I also wouldn't be too opposed to them going in and like making something new of their own. With all the lessons learned and like all the inspiration found over the years of remastering these beloved games, like I'd be curious to see what they're kind of thinking of. But at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you got a good thing going and you're making good money and, remaking and remastering the favorite games of your youth and working with partners that were dream partners to work with, like they're getting to a point now where they're established to such a degree that, I mean, they probably have to be one of the most sought after studios in terms of like, if you're looking for a team to remaster your game, Blue Point isn't available anymore because of Sony's acquisition. And then you go to, I mean, Nightdive would, you could probably argue Virtuous now over Nightdive, but they're 1 and 2, right? Virtuous more maybe of a remake studio with Metal Gear Solid 3 and Oblivion, but Nightdive is absolutely fucking crushing it. So shout out. And next up here, we have a story regarding Double Fine. Tim Schafer confirms that Double Fine is working on multiple projects. Schafer said, "We are making other games too. We have multiple games going on in the studio. The thing I will say is that they are all brand new IP." So, this is music to my ears. I loved Psychonauts 2. I would be very much down for Psychonauts 3. But I don't know. Let's stay fresh. Let's get new shit into the people's hands. I look at something like Keeper and I don't have much interest in it, but I still support the fuck out of Double Fine making just Double Fine ass games. Keeper is a Double Fine ass game, and I don't know. I start thinking kind of in that similar vein of the conversation regarding Nightdive, of just like dream things I would like to see Double Fine work on. And once again, I'll pose the question to you all. What would be your dream Double Fine project? Is there anything from their, well, I guess they said all new IP. So yeah, let's stay within that realm. In terms of new IP, what is some weird new IP that you would like to see Double Fine take a crack at? I wrote down a few. I got a few on the board here as well, and so I know this will never happen, but I would be so down to see Double Fine and Rare work together on like a single player pirate game. You know, I'm maybe not directly Sea of Thieves because I don't think that would make sense, but having Rare go in and, you know, assist with the combat and the boat navigation and then the naval combat and all of those systems, and then having Double Fine, you know, go in and make like a humorous kind of Pirates of the Caribbean, kind of similar to that tonally, but yeah, I don't know, I think that would be a sick ass game. And we're kind of I've talked about this, where we're starting to see a lot of pirate games hit the market, and it's like developers all kind of have these similar ideas at the same time. And it's like, oh shit, 4 years later, all of our games are releasing at the same time because we were inspired by the same thing 4 years ago. And it's like, you don't really want that situation, because you are seeing pirate games kind of come back into the trendy new thing. But I'd still be so down to see a Pirates of the Caribbean ass game from Double Fine. But I'd honestly be down for just a new platformer, like a new IP that's a platformer that is not Psychonauts, you know, that plays like Psychonauts, that has some of those same mechanics and vibes. But like Psychonauts has a great foundation, but it's also a game from 15 years ago, Psychonauts, yeah, 2005, 4. So, I mean, no, we're talking about 20 years ago. Psychonauts 1 came out. Fucking A. So, you know, that is a... Listen, I love that you're committed to that fan base and you wanted to get that sequel out, but I do kind of understand as well the reality of, like, you know, maybe we could look at what makes Psychonauts so good and just create a new IP with a lot of the bones of Psychonauts and have that be appealing to people who weren't playing games in 2004. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, especially when you're talking about kind of mascot platformers that typically appeal to a younger demographic. I know Psychonauts isn't really one of those, but in terms of, I know Double Fine isn't like you don't go to Double Fine for the big brain business. That's not your move. You don't go and grab Double Fine and acquire them to be like, okay, well, we're going to put you on a mass appeal, broad appeal. Like that's not their thing. But at the same time, when you see a team that can create a platformer that is that fucking fun, there has to be some alarm bell ringing in some executive's head at Microsoft or at Xbox going, well, damn, I wonder if we gave them, you know, $30 million, $40 million to go make a slightly more kid-friendly platformer. I'm not saying, once again, I'm not saying that's what I would want per se, but I do kind of see the business brain side of it being like, that's probably not a bad idea. But yeah, I think something that for me personally that I think would be sick as fuck is something like Full Throttle, but turned into a 5 to 7 hour small scale action adventure title. Just having like very linear, like a very, very, very linear narrative driven biker style story. I think that would be sick as hell. I'm not saying full Days Gone, big open world, anything like that, but, you know, small biker sections, maybe where you're driving the bike in some very, very on rails sort of, like that could be dope as hell, man. I even think to Brutal Legends, and I know I'm kind of sticking within the Double Fine IP wheelhouse, but saying, okay, well, let me take your IP and make it into something that is not your IP, a new IP that kind of looks and acts and plays, and but this is different for Brutal Legends. I look at that format of a heavy metal, you know, a wink and a nod to heavy metal, and I think that is very, very fucking appealing, once again, to a larger audience outside of just the game space, because I think that Brutal Legends did pretty well in terms of just attracting kind of eyeballs that aren't necessarily quote unquote gamers. But, you know, it was essentially you had like your real-time strategy elements in there, and I think that put off a lot of people. But then I look at something like Hi-Fi Rush and I'm like, damn, well, I think there's the way to do it. You have some kind of rhythm action game, but it's just more based on like heavy metal music with a darker tone, darker themes, not as vibrant, colorful of a sort of world that you're inhabiting, not as comic book looking, or maybe you could do like a really dark sort of gritty kind of comic book aesthetic, maybe even black and white. The whole, what was it? Was it Sin City? I forget the damn names, where it's like the black and white with the splashes of red. Like, I think there'd be some dope ways to make like a heavy metal, especially with like Ozzy just passed, and it'd be cool to see, because Ozzy was a big part of Brutal Legends. I don't know, it would be dope to see like a, you know, just some sort of I'm not saying like a Ozzy game, but like a game that kind of honors his legacy, his music, have that be a big part of it, and sort of this full circle moment where you're also honoring Brutal Legends in the same vein, in the same breath. I don't know. Those are just some ideas that hit my head for what I would potentially like to see Double Fine work on, or what I think that would maybe be smart for them to work on. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you would like to see Double Fine create. Let's see. So we have the announcement of a new Halloween game, and this is going to be a single player and multiplayer Halloween game, and it's being made by Ilphonic, and I think Gunn is working on it as well. Which, listen, I know that there's a lot of, I'm not even gonna say mixed, more kind of negative reception to just the idea that, oh well, they greenlight a game, release it, and then pull the plug on it, kill it. It's never seen from or heard from again. And it's, so I acknowledge all of that, but at the same time, I do want to think about just, this is a very fucking fantasy booking ass episode today, but I did want to just sort of sit down and kind of play out like what the perfect Halloween game could look like. What is the scenario where this game comes out and it's actually really fucking good? Like, what would that game have to be? So, but real quick before we jump into it, they did show a trailer of it, and this trailer is kind of more of like a concept mock-up. It doesn't really feel like these are in-game character models or anything like that. It's saying that it's set in 1978, and it definitely has that late 70s sort of vibe to it, the high-rise bell-bottom jeans, and then, you know, the house design is very much in that late 70s, early 80s sort of American style. But yeah, you see the lady's hair is just a little bit frizzy, and then starting to get into that kind of hair metal groove with the fluffy-ass big hairdos and all that shit. But in terms of like the perfect Halloween game, it's a hard thing to think. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is obviously you got to have Michael Myers stalking you like Mr. X from Resident Evil. You know, and probably have some small little city, or at least a few blocks of a town that think something like RE3, where you're running away from Nemesis throughout the streets of Raccoon City. Something of that scale for a Michael Myers game, I think would make sense. You got to have your teen drama in there, like a senior year trip, or some college kids going on a vacation, or, you know, simple sort of teen drama setup. Like you obviously got to have that in all of your fucking horror games. But I think that the question is like, how does it play? You know, like, are you just running away on foot the entire time? Is that like enough to really justify a full 8 to 10 hour game? Like a walking sim, run away from monster, hide in fucking cabinet, hide in fucking closet, hide in dumpster. Like, is that really the main hook of the game? Is it a third person shooter? Is it, you know, more super massive style decision making, or is it like some combination of all that? And I think that's probably the best idea, having some variation, some combination of a lot of different elements to give it just some sort of unique flavor. Once again, you're getting costly when incorporating all of those different elements and mechanics into your game, though. I think that the idea, though, of like a super massive style game where you have like QTEs where you have to make decisions on the fly. Like, do you try to start up the car? You're not sure if the keys are in it, but you see the car over there, and then you have this one character who knows how to hotwire cars, but they're not sure how close Michael Myers is behind them. And do you do that, or do you like head off to the woods and you have this quick kind of split on the screen where it's like go left, pick left for the woods, pick right for the car. You make that quick decision, and I don't know. It kind of. I would like to see some of that stuff be a little bit more systemic, though. A little bit more mechanical. Like, I would actually like to be able to do those things. It'd be sick to have this very small town, but it's like fully interactable, and you can kind of just try out these different runs. And that kind of, like, I never want to recommend anything as a roguelike, but something like this, I actually could be seeing that take shape as a roguelike and be really fucking cool. You're just running through the town and trying to figure out each step you need to take to be able to survive. Like, there's some cool ass fucking ideas that could take shape there. Having like one gun hidden somewhere in the town that you have to go find, or one running car, a couple of generators, some melee weapons, some bats, some fucking 2x4s, just all this shit kind of littered around town. And, having like people that you can run up to and ask for help. And depending on who you ask, different things can take shape and play out and have this sort of dynamic effect where, say, it's like, okay, you have the frat guy that you go up to and you ask him for help, and he's kind of jacked and he's athletic but super fucking dumb. So he can help you, like if Michael Myers is closing in on you, he can help you with some sort of brute force. And he plays like the hero role, and he tells you to run away or whatever. So he ends up getting killed, but it buys you more time, or like, I don't know, say a fucking, like the town sheriff. He has access to firearms, but he's also very loud and attracts attention your way with the sirens or with the sound of the gun or whatever the case may be. Maybe he's a little bit hot-headed. And then kind of the opposite, where the town librarian, she's super knowledgeable and can give you hints and clues, but she's completely useless in terms of confrontation and can't really help in any sort of like combat related situation. Like, I think to something similar in terms of scope to like a bully. Maybe, honestly, bully might even be too big. Maybe that comparison to Resident Evil 3 might be perfect. But I'm thinking bully in terms of like, okay, well, here's the bike, and I'm going to go and hop on the bike to get away. Here's a slingshot. Here's a damn fire extinguisher. Here's all of these different sort of things that you can pick up along the way, these different places you can go in, these buildings you can go in and have kind of different resources and different things that you're just trying to kind of uncover throughout the town. I don't know. I think that there's a cool game that can be made based on just kind of getting stalked by one of these iconic, bad guys. But at the same time, I think that a key component is like wanting to play as the bad guy. And I think they mentioned that you can play as Michael Myers or be, someone from the town running away. But it's just, and maybe that's more of a multiplayer thing where you can play as Michael Myers because it's going to be the 1v4 asymmetric. Like, it's going to be the game that you expect it to be in terms of a multiplayer experience. I'm just more so very, very curious about the single player. And also, it's a good thing that the single player is going to exist, because we know that the multiplayer is probably going to get pulled offline at some point. So to have something preserved from this game that can be accessible for years to come, like that's a good thing, as long as it's rolled out correctly. So shout out, new Halloween game on the way. It says coming in 2026, so probably 2027, 2028. We have the full lineup for the Metal Gear Legacy Collection. The upcoming game from Digital Eclipse. So we have Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3, UMK3, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, MK4, Mortal Kombat Advanced, Deadly Alliance, the Game Boy Advanced version, Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition, Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, and Mortal Kombat Special Forces. So, yeah, a nice roster there. You know, nothing definitely. I'm pumped to jump into this. Really, what I'm pumped for more than anything with this Legacy Collection is to just sort of kind of relearn the history of Mortal Kombat. Like, I'm pumped for the kind of documentary more than I am the games, which might be damning praise. But so just for me personally, obviously, it would be dope to see the PS2 games in this collection. Like, I've really been wanting to replay Shaolin Monks and Deadly Alliance and Armageddon. Like, I love those games. And Shaolin Monks honestly might be my favorite Mortal Kombat game of all time, just due to how batshit fucking crazy it is. You know, it's kind of got this sort of brawler. It's more so a brawler than a fighter, which obviously that's not going to be appealing to the main Mortal Kombat fan base. I get that. I get why they went away from that. But for me personally, that's definitely more appealing to me. I'm not the biggest fighting game guy. I like a good fighting game every now and then, especially if it has a good story. But the brawler aspect, the RPG aspect, that got me in the door. I was like, fuck yeah. You know, really that whole PS2 run, like Armageddon, having the kart racers and shit baked into the game, and yeah, like create a fighter in there, and you could create and customize your own fatalities and shit. I don't know. I hope this Legacy Collection does well so that we can get that full PS2 rollout. And even the PS3 games, which I think some of those are accessible on modern consoles. But even, dude, I would be so down with PlayStation Plus doing their whole premium rollout and then featuring more and more classic games into their premium collection. I would be so down to just see them work with WB to get those classic PS2 games ported to PlayStation Plus Premium. I would be 100% satisfied with just that level of effort. Not, no need for a remaster, no need for updates and enhancements and this, that, and the other, and then let's just port those games directly as is. I'd be totally fine with that. All right, so we got two more stories. I'll rapid fire run through these real quick, guys. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but we got a reveal for this upcoming AA action adventure game called 1348 Ex Voto. So it's being published by Dear Villagers, who, they haven't published many games of this scale. I'd say that this is probably the biggest, most expensive game under their umbrella. Other than this, they have Big Helmet Heroes, The Edge of Eternity. They definitely operate on a smaller scale. So I'm happy that they're funding something that's this big and looks this kind of. This is one of those AA games that seems to be teetering into the AAA space in terms of visual fidelity and just the graphically it has that AAA flair to it. It's being developed by Cedello, which is a 15-person small team out of Italy, but supposedly full of people who have worked in the AAA space in the past. And yeah, I mean, obviously the trailer will be running for you all, and it looks fine. It definitely looks like an Unreal Engine 5 game. You see a lot of stutter, and it's a bit framey, but that's kind of Unreal Engine 5 games, a lot of them nowadays, unfortunately. But I am definitely going to keep my eye on it based on some of there's not a lot of description for this game so far, but a couple things here that really stood out to me. So cinematic combat inspired by historical European martial arts and animated with trained performance capture actors. So that's probably the big beat that stood out to me, where it's any type of martial arts influence in games, I am there for. I want to see games that are looking at kind of a specific region of a martial arts practice and taking that and trying to craft a combat system around that, that is very, very fucking appealing to me. I, think some of my favorite games of all time. I think to like Sleeping Dogs or Sifu, or like even some upcoming stuff like Spine or Acts of Blood, or games that are really focusing and prioritizing on that hand-to-hand combat, or not even necessarily hand-to-hand combat. You can mix different melee weapons into the mix as well and still kind of be under that umbrella of whatever martial arts specialty that you're practicing. So yeah, and they're talking about 14th century Italy, and you're engaging in some political intrigue and dealing with religious zealots, and y'all know all of that shit is up my alley. So yeah, as long as the acting is strong, and I know they have, it says here they have Jennifer English, who, she was a part of Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring and Expedition 33, so she's going to be one of the main cast members in the story. So yeah, here's hoping, man. Can't necessarily say that trailer blew me away, but anything AA action adventure game related is going to be something I keep my eye on. So shout out to you, 1348 Ex Voto. So final shout out real quickly here. I Hate This Place is a video game, and it actually looks pretty fucking dope. It kind of reminds me of that game Last Stand Aftermath that released a few years back. It's based on a comic book from the 1980s, and it definitely has that kind of aesthetic, that vibe, that flair to it. And yeah, it's a top-down, action-oriented survival horror game with an emphasis on crafting. And it's really trying to focus on the survival. In that term, survival horror, it's really trying to emphasize survival. Supposedly there's like a day and night cycle, and that will affect the game with different dynamic encounters. Kind of think something like Dying Light 1, where, at night it would become brutally difficult, and you're just trying to find safety at all cost. And when you're out roaming the streets at night, to just get to the next day, that's kind of the priority. And so yeah, got a whole lot of horror this episode, and I'm always down for some damn horror games, and a nice variety of horror. We have I Hate This Place, and then kind of 1348 Ex Voto. I think that could end up being in the horror realm. Mortal Kombat's somewhat horror adjacent. Halloween is obviously horror. Let's see here. Damn, we didn't even talk about it, but talking about Double Fine, I'd be so down to see a Double Fine like indie horror game. I would absolutely kill for that. And yeah, you're talking about Eternal Darkness, and oh shit, there's a lot of horror. Bioshock, Tormented Souls. Yeah, wow, a lot of horror this episode. I didn't even really, pretty much every single story is horror related. So a very horrifying episode for today's Gamescom coverage. But that's it for the show today. Like I said, a lot of smaller stories that kind of make into a overall larger episode. But I appreciate you good people for tuning in. Appreciate you for stopping by. And hit me in the comments down below with your thoughts on any of this shit, and I will get back at you. Appreciate you for tuning in, and I will see you good people in the next episode. Goodbye.